I guarantee you've heard how important thumbnails are for the performance of your video. And so many people, including me, tell you, go make good thumbnails. But let's be real, what does that even mean? Well, today I'm gonna find out by looking at as many recent and successful YouTube videos as I possibly can to see what their thumbnails have in common. I wanna find out what's working on YouTube right now, and I wanna know why. Let's go. Holy cow, I have to admit, I did not expect it to go like this, but let's dive into it. First, I'm gonna share all the hard numbers with you, and then I'm gonna share with you some amazing examples for each one of the criteria that I looked over. Because I think it's important to note that not all YouTubers are using the same scroll stoppers or the same curiosity gaps or the same visual elements. But what separates many experienced YouTubers from beginning YouTubers is how well they implement these things. There's one other huge factor that I need to talk about, but we're gonna do that at the end of the video, so stick around for that. Okay, so what's working right now on YouTube? Well, the first criteria I looked at were the visual elements and how certain elements were being surfaced by YouTube more often than others. And the first one was light thumbnails versus dark thumbnails. Now, out of nearly 250 thumbnails that I looked at, 79% of them were light and 21% of them were dark. Now, you might think, well, I should be making light thumbnails, right? Well, not quite. Look at this thumbnail here. This channel has just over 600 subscribers when recording this video, and this video got over 14,000 views. So even though the majority of thumbnails are light, it still goes to show that the dark thumbnails can work just fine. The second element that I took a look at was text on screen, and honestly, this one shocked me. 55% of thumbnails featured text, while 45% of them didn't. I honestly can't believe how close it was to a 50-50 split. Now, here are a couple of the thumbnails that I looked at with text and without text, and I will just say, overarchingly, as I combed through all of these thumbnails, the one thing that I noticed here is that thumbnails with text typically seem to perform better if the text was simple and curiosity invoking. Like this one, for example, where it says the end. The video, as we look at the title, is talking about YouTube Shorts, and there's some other indicators of that, but come on, the end, like when you use that symbol and that text together, it drives really good curiosity and it is scroll stopping. And the same goes for the flip side. The thumbnails without text, like this one, need to do the same thing. And so, although they're using different visual elements here, they're using the same principles of thumbnail building to make a successful thumbnail. All right, let's take a look at the next element. The third visual element that I looked at were featured faces. 84% of thumbnails that I looked at featured faces, while 16% of thumbnails did not feature a face at all. And I know what you're thinking. That probably means you should be featuring your face on all your thumbnails, right? Well, hold your horses there a little bit. I'm going to tell you why that's probably not the case. Exhibit A, look at this thumbnail by Think Media. This thumbnail obviously has no face on it, and it has over 500,000 views. Nice job, Think Media. Or this video with over 100,000 views on a channel with less than 500 subscribers. That's literally crazy. So the takeaway here is that obviously faces are proven to work. We know that they are a scroll stopper. Anytime a human sees another human face, it makes you think twice. But faces work especially well if you are a known creator. Other than that, like my face in like a Mr. Beast style thumbnail would do nothing for people because I'm not recognized widely like Mr. Beast is. But Mr. Beast's face on a thumbnail would do wonders for many people's thumbnails. In fact, I saw that a lot of times as I looked at these thumbnails. So you can use faces, but you don't have to have a successful thumbnail. Moving on to the next element, which was simple image thumbnails versus highly edited multiple element style thumbnails. And what I found is that 28% of thumbnails were simple image thumbnails, and 72% of thumbnails were more highly edited and had multiple elements. I'm not too surprised there, but this one was really interesting because there were some simple image thumbnails that worked incredibly well, and some that honestly didn't seem to work at all. The biggest difference that I could tell is that the ones that worked really well often looked like a simple image, but they had been edited to stand out. Maybe the saturation was increased, or there was a very obvious focal point, or there was somebody famous in the thumbnail. In most cases, the simple image will only work if there is something really unique about that image. All right, next up we have positive thumbnails versus negative or neutral thumbnails. And the reason I put negative and neutral together is because as I looked through the thumbnails, even the neutral thumbnails honestly felt negative compared to the overly positive thumbnails that we see on YouTube. The final numbers for this criteria was 30% positive thumbnails and 70% negative or neutral thumbnails. Now, let's take a second to talk about that. I was really surprised to note that the neutral thumbnails felt negative. Sometimes when I've done thumbnails, I'll make a neutral face thinking that people just might wonder what's going on. when in reality, it almost gives this very negative feel until sometimes you look at the title and you realize that it is just a neutral thumbnail, it's not negative. Even if your intent was to make it look neutral, it very well could come off feeling negative. So that was something that I just didn't expect to see. All right, let's take a look at the final criteria before we talk about that one thing that makes great thumbnails great. The criteria was whether the thumbnail created curiosity or not. Now, as I looked at every thumbnail, I was surprised to notice that nearly every thumbnail did create some level of curiosity. I expected there to be really good thumbnails and really bad thumbnails, but some of these showed awe-inspiring photos. Some of them posed an interesting question. Some showed something really cool, and others invoked just a very specific emotion or showed a transformation. All of these things piqued my curiosity to some extent, and I just didn't expect that. It was at this point during my research that I realized this video wasn't going to be about good thumbnails versus bad thumbnails. Rather, it was going to be about thumbnails that include the right mixture and balance of all of these elements that I've talked about, and more, to be honest. Sometimes we balance them really well, and sometimes we don't. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the thumbnail ideation process, where sometimes we will come up with a couple killer thumbnails that seem like they're going to be absolutely amazing. We pick one, and it flops. Then we take some of the audience feedback and discuss some of our other thumbnail options that might be better, and many times we will swap them out. But the key takeaway here is that you can and should do your very best to make the perfect thumbnail. But even then, sometimes we get it wrong. The final element that actually determines your success after your best effort and preparation is luck. Now, I can say that honestly and truthfully because there are so many variables that we just can't control. What if my thumbnail shows up next to a Mr. Beast video or another YouTube education channel where they just happen to talk about a topic that was more relevant? Maybe my curiosity elements were really good, but some of the other videos on the homepage that day were just a little bit better. Among the top thumbnails on YouTube showing right now, there is some of everything working. Faces, no faces, text, no text, positive, negative. No matter what elements you use, you have to do two things. You have to stop the scroll and you have to generate curiosity. By doing these two things, your thumbnails will have the best chance at killing it on YouTube. Just remember, once you get them to click, you have to deliver on the promise your thumbnail made. And a big part of that is storytelling. So go check out this video where we essentially give you storytelling on YouTube for dummies. It's a really great video. Go check it out. We'll see you, channel makers.